mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 5, Episode 3 of Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale, entitled Border. The title seems to be, I'm assuming, but can't really think of any other reasons for this title, but it seems to refer to the knowledge that June and Moira gain about not only Mayday being real, but Mayday having outposts that are positioned all along the border. These little small outposts, they're not huge, so they don't get caught, but like, you know, these little outposts, and just, I guess, just learning that it's a real thing. Fairly self-explanatory title. Pardon me if I clear my throat a lot. I'm getting over a cold I had over the weekend. I feel the best that I've felt probably since like Friday, so I'm for the most part okay, but I might have to clear my throat a few times or something like that. But so this episode, I heaped pretty high praise upon the first two episodes of this season, and I think this episode is a pretty good example of why, even though there are times when I speak very highly of this show, that I never quite speak of it in the same terms that I speak of shows like Succession or these other like elite high level shows. And it's because there's too many times where the show can knock it out of the park, and it might do that 3-4 times in a season, but then it'll also do maybe more than 3 or 4 times in a season, have episodes that are just okay, or episodes where I got a lot of problems with decisions that they made, things that are unclear, things that are laughable, where it's just like, there's just too many issues. This is one of those episodes where I don't really have I do have some good stuff to say, but this is one of those episodes that just I had several problems with it. It was fairly like, it was one of those come down episodes. Like, you get a great episode, usually on most shows, the very next episode is kind of a come down, where it's kind of like dealing with the ramifications of what happened in the previous one, or setting up the way things are going to happen going forward. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I think, though, this episode was pretty kind of tedious, a little boring, kind of uneventful. A lot of the story lives in the dialogue in this episode, a lot of what we learn, but nothing that I think felt like, oh shit, that's a big deal. Just a lot of things that were presented as, oh shit, that's a big deal, but just don't really feel that way and that don't land that way. I think the Mayday thing is a perfect example of that, actually. Like, Moira and June reacted like they were told that, like, Mayday is run by, like, Joe Biden in secret, and he had, like it's some huge fucking, like, wild thing for them to learn about, and it's like, you just assumed that it was more metaphorical than it was literal. You find out it's literal. But they were just like the fucking like Patrick Starfish mind blown thing. And I'm like, that's not, I don't understand why you guys think that's that big of a deal. But I feel like when you have 2 episodes that are this good to start off with, and then followed by this one, when you have that steep drop off, that kind of sucks, particularly if, for me, having had the whole week in between episode 2 and episode 3, despite having that week in between, you could still very much feel the drop in like tension, suspense, all of that stuff. Like in the first 2 episodes, and I don't think this is a coincidence, that were directed by Elizabeth Moss, they feel very high tension, kind of like very much that vibe that you felt, during season 1 of this show. And then there's just this huge drop off this week. And it makes me wonder, it almost kind of makes me feel for, I'm going to cough. It almost makes me feel for the people who are going to binge this. I felt the drop off even with a week in between the episodes. If you watch episode 2 and then go straight into this one, there's probably going to be a even more considerable drop off in tone and just how you feel viscerally coming out of episode 2, going into episode 3, and then finishing up episode 3. Like, there's probably going to be a pretty big drop-off. And even more so, this episode committed one of my personal biggest offenses that a show or a film can do, that it's unforgivable. Like I like it for real. Like it's not something where it's like, okay, the show did this, I'm never watching it again. Unforgivable, but it's something that I'm not gonna forget. Like when The Walking Dead did this, I stopped watching The Walking Dead. But The Walking Dead was, one, already a shitty show by this point, and two, they did it at a mid-season finale, so there was like several months in between. Whereas, like, you know, The Handmaid's Tale just did it, and there was only a week in between, so it has less of an impact. But we'll talk about that in a moment. First, I want to give quick shout outs to my patrons. I know you guys might be getting sick of me dropping the patrons shit at the beginning, but hey, as long as new people jump on, I'm going to do it on the videos to get the most plays. But patrons will always be listed in the episode description, and if you want to know about the Patreon, you can click on the Patreon link in the episode description, or you can find the video that's titled Major Announcement in my videos, and that will break everything down for you. So, starting off with the episode, we pick up right where we left off with June and Luke now back home, just pondering everything they saw with this funeral. And June is hyper-focused on Hannah wearing, we find out it's a purple dress, but she starts off just pondering what color it was. Like, what does this mean? We find out it's a purple dress. We later find out from Nick that the purple dress means that Hannah is essentially ready for, like, wife training. He makes it sound like a boot camp or some shit. Like, but we find out it's for this wife training. And there's an interesting moment in this opening scene where Moira, she's like, I know a way where we could talk to some kind of like these rebels who can get messages to commanders or anyone over in Gilead. And June is like, why didn't you tell me this? And she's like, these people are wild fucked up. They just got out themselves. Like, these aren't the kind of people you need to be around. And Moira's like, and June's like, you don't get to decide that. And like, shows and movies and people in real life do this. They almost have like these canned responses to certain situations where it's like you've seen other people respond to this in this kind of way, and that becomes a widely accepted response for that statement or that behavior. And you don't get to decide that. Is something that they love to put into like shows and movies as these like big comebacks to these retorts, like, you don't get to decide that for me, like, I have my own autonomy, god damn it. And it's like, okay, like, I get it, but like in a very, very, very literal sense, Moira does get to decide whether or not you were told that. She has information that June doesn't have. It is literally 100% Moira's decision whether or not she decides to tell June this information voluntarily. Now, if June goes, hey, do you know anything about people who can get messages over to Gilead? And Moira's like, no. And then later is like, well, actually, I do know somebody. I just didn't want to tell you because I didn't feel you were ready. Maybe then you can be like, okay, well, you didn't get to decide that. Like, I asked you and you lied to me. Now you can be like, okay, this is something that I can be a little bit more mad about. But like, how do you say you don't get to decide whether or not you voluntarily tell me information you have? Like, she's not obligated to tell you anything. Like, she can make decisions on whether or not you need to have her information. Now, if the information pertains to Hannah directly, sure. Yeah, you can be like, yeah, I know Hannah's at so-and-so. And be like, okay, well, why wouldn't you tell me that? But it's not a why wouldn't you tell me that. It was a you don't get to decide that. And it's like, and maybe it is just me being super literal, but it's like, yes, she does get to decide that. I don't know. That just, I literally out loud said, actually, she does get to decide that. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think that just kind of speaks to when sometimes people just kind of like, if you're writing something, maybe you just program in these automatic responses that fit into these situations that you've seen in a multitude of other television shows or movies or something, and it's like, it didn't really work in that scene for me. But so they show up at this outpost, and they're greeted by this woman named Lily, who, if you watched Only Murders in the Building this season, she was Nina in Only Murders. We see, and the only reason I'm really mentioning this scene is because when Lily is leading them into this cabin, we don't just see, I believe June and Moira look up at it, an upside down flag. And for those who may not be aware, an upside down flag symbolizes like dire distress in your country. And I think that that's interesting because obviously the United States is very, very much under distress on this show. But we've also kind of seen the upside down flags pop up a lot more in real life since the overturning of Roe v. Wade in this country. So I just thought the upside down flag was fitting, not just for the show, but fitting also given the times that we're currently living in. And no matter which side of the aisle you're on, you probably feel like the country's under distress. So it's pretty appropriate. So like I said, this is where we find out that Mayday is real. Like I said, the level of shock that they have here just doesn't feel quite appropriate to me. It feels a little bit extreme, but this isn't the only time in this episode that new information is presented in a way that, in my opinion, makes it feel like it's a bigger deal than it actually is. But let's see, moving on. The best part of this episode to me is the introduction of Commander Mckenzie. You could tell he's going to be the new villain on this show. I recognize this actor from something else. I know he was in Ozark, but I'm like struggling to remember exactly who he was in Ozark. But I feel like I know him from something else better, and it's escaping me. But this guy is going to play a great villain. I already know it. So first off, him and his wife are the parents of Hannah / Agnes. What else did I have? He knows somehow that June was involved in Fred's murder, and even more so, he seems to, well, 1, he knows that June was involved. 2, he suspects that she had help. And 3, I think he is also now possibly becoming suspicious of Nick after he catches Nick talking to Mark outside. So I think Commander Mckenzie is going to be real interesting this season. And then also in this scene, I do like watching, when I say in this scene, I didn't actually specify a scene, but it's the scene where everyone's like at this dinner table. It's Commander Mckenzie and his wife, Serena, Nick, his wife Rose, and Commander Lawrence. And they're all at this table, and everyone is collectively discussing what's to be done about June. And Nick is literally like squirming in his seat. I'm like, come on, man. Like, it's so bad that I'm almost kind of like, okay, maybe you should tone that down. Like, as an actor, tone that down. Because both me and my wife are sitting there like, he's being so obvious that if no one had any clue that he had anything to do with June, he's kind of giving himself away by literally squirming in his seat. I'm like, come on, bro. But speaking of Nick, Nick is actually a part of the other instance in which information was conveyed that kind of was portrayed as, in my opinion, being a bigger deal than it is. So he tells Mark that he wants to tell June he's married. And he later does this, and he tells June, like, they're on the phone, he's telling about his wife, like, oh, do you think I like her? Oh, yeah, you like her. She like you too. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, like, why is it being made such a big deal that Nick telling June that he's married? Because, okay, on the surface, if you don't look anywhere past it, you can just go, okay, Nick and June had a thing, and now he wants to tell his girl or whatever that he's actually married. And that's if you stop right there, then okay, I could guess you could make a big deal out of Nick wanting to tell June he's married, if you stop right there. But if you have a little bit more than no brain at all, you're going to think about, 1, June's married. 2, June knows how things work in Gilead. Why would she be surprised that Nick has to take a wife, for 1? And for 2, she doesn't really have to feel any way about that because she knows it's for duty and obligation, like on House of the Dragon. He knows it's out of obligation and not because he's in love with this person. But like I said, she's married too, and she's been married. So clearly she don't give a fuck about the sacredness of marriage. Like, she was fucking around with you. Like, even if you look at it as like, okay, she didn't know if she'd ever see Luke again, so she just developed this thing with Nick while in Gilead. Well, now she's currently back with Luke, presumably with him like in the next room while she's on the phone. Well, no, he's not in the next room because she was off at that cabin. But nearby. Luke is nearby, and she's just having this nice little loving conversation with her side piece. Why are you making a big deal out of telling her that you married? Like what the fuck does she care? She don't give a fuck about her own husband. She care about your wife. Man. But again, like I said, this could just be me nitpicking, man. I don't know, but I approach every episode of every show I watch and every movie with a blank fucking slate. So I'm not coming in here looking to pick on the show, or I'm coming into every fucking episode looking to pick on it. So if I watch the first two and I'm like, these are great, I'm approaching episode 3 the same way I approach episodes 1 and 2, and I left out of episode 1 and 2 like, yo, those shits was fire. And I left out of this one like, didn't need it. And I approach with it, and it actually even helps how I approach an episode if it's following great episodes, especially if it's the first 2 episodes. I'm thinking like, am I in for this level of quality all seasons? So I'm entering into the third one like, yo, let's get it, like kind of like with a positive energy. So it takes a lot of mistakes to get me from a place where I'm hitting play in a positive mindset, kind of expecting something good to happen, and walking away from it like, they dropped the ball on that one. And it's just this week, and maybe you guys don't feel that way. Maybe you thought this episode was straight hot fire. I don't know how you feel that way, but like maybe you did. But that's just how I felt on this one. So Serena tells Mark she intends on staying in Gilead, and I love this line where she goes, he shits on Gilead and like, you don't belong here. And she goes, it's a shame you can't see all the right we've done here. And like, again, like this episode was replete with lines that I was just like, what a stupid fucking line to write. Like, it's a shame you can't see all the right we've done here. Like, no, it's a shame you can't see the horrors you have inflicted in the name of doing something that's not even right. You just have decided that it's right, and that all the horrific things that you've done are a means to a righteous end. Like, we don't need to really talk about how shitty Gilead is, but I just thought that was a funny line. Like, it wasn't even like badly written. Like, I believe that Serena believes that, so it's not a bad line. It's just funny. Like come on. So Serena also seemed to possibly have her eye on maybe a marriage with Commander Lawrence. I don't know if you guys got that vibe or not. But he explicitly says he has no intentions of remarrying. But they have this weird moment. I thought it was weird when she put his hand on her belly, like, oh, okay, that is very intimate. But he ends up being involved in the decision that ultimately sends Serena back to Toronto as a global ambassador. And she's just like, yeah, I want a staff, I want money. And they're like, we don't give a fuck. You ain't gonna be here. You can have whatever you want, bro. And they send her on her merry way. I like how she gets on the plane. Mark's like, yo, they told us to wait. Can you imagine like having that like conversation where you're just like, yo, you gotta go. I'm staying here. And Serena was very firm. And then like, you're Mark, you leave the I'm staying here conversation you have with Serena, and you go to get on the plane. They're like, no. just give us a few minutes. She'll be here in a minute. Like, oh, okay, wow. So June is informed of Serena's return, which makes for an interesting bit of a jump scare scene where she pops up on Serena's passenger window and does this like, I feel like I'm being really hard on this episode, but I mean, it is what it is. I really do I hang my hat on calling it like I see it. It felt like a bastardized version of the Do You Understand Me scene from last season. It's like they were like, yo, that Do You Understand Me scene fucking crushed. Let's try it again. And then Elizabeth Moss was like, all right, cool. And they were like, yeah, but I'm not going to put like the full effort into it. Like, I'm just going to kind of do it. Like, not really, but kind of. It was fine. But like, I also feel like if you are in a situation where, let's just say, like, I don't know how much time has passed, but let's say it's been a day since the funeral. And you see the funeral on television, and it's middle of the day of Friday, and you find out on Saturday afternoon, yo, Serena's pulling up at the airport right now. Are you just gonna go knock on the window and be like, yo, don't touch my daughter, fam? Like, she's not even with your daughter no more. She's here in Canada with you. Like, what's she gonna do? What she gonna do to your daughter? Like, I'm thinking she's gonna come up with a hammer and break them. Now, that would have been lit. If she come up with like a fucking hammer and like smashes the window and like tries to like choke Serena, has me pulled away by the driver. Now you're giving me what I need to see. But just like, knock, 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 stay away from my daughter that you're in an entirely different country from. Like, okay, whatever, man. So, and this is why, even more so why I feel bad about shitting on this episode, or feeling like I'm shitting on this episode. I haven't even got to the unforgivable thing yet. Janine and Esther being alive makes me so fucking angry, I don't even know what to do with myself. And I'm smiling almost to curb my rage. I do not like the emotional manipulation of fake deaths. If they wanted to have the attention of us realizing that Esther has poisoned herself and Janine as a means to get Janine back for being deceptive toward, from her perspective, from Esther's perspective, being deceptive. Maybe have them like choking or something like that, like, oh my God, I can't breathe, and then like maybe people rush in and try to resuscitate them, drag them out. We see them getting put into, the back of an ambulance. Like, leave me with, oh shit, they got poisoned. Are they gonna be alive or not? Don't have blood pouring out of their mouths while they writhe on the floor, clutching their throats. Like, this looks like people who are going to be dead within 5 to 10 seconds. So you did all that to knock as much of the wind out of us as you possibly could at the end of that episode to take it back the very next week. Fuck you for that. I hate that shit, bro. Like, I hate fake emotionally manipulative deaths. Like, because now that means nothing. That big, impactful, like, oh my God, what the fuck just happened means nothing now. Absolutely, literally nothing, because both of them are still alive. It was a fucking emotional jerk off that they did just to fuck with us, just so they could have that big ending of that episode. And only so you could have that big ending. Because if you wanted to make it just make sense, you would have found a way to do that. But they wanted to have that episode end in that way. And that episode told me that those characters were gonna die. And so to bring them back and have them alive, and this is like the second or third time they faked killed Janine. I'm sick of that shit. Like, I don't even get, like, if Janine actually ever does die, I'm not even gonna give a fuck. I'm not even gonna believe she's dead unless it's a bullet to the head. And even then, after this, they could shoot Janine in the head. I might be like, she might just come back. I don't know. Maybe they'll turn her into like a cyborg. Like, I'm not gonna give them that. So, man, fuck them for that, dude. I hate those fucking take it back ass deaths. And they did it with Glenn on The Walking Dead, and then they went bye-bye for several months, allowing me to get fully pissed the fuck off that we have no idea what happened with Glenn. And they pretended like he was dead, and they had him hide under... I'm not even going to go back to it. So, yeah, that is unforgivable to me. And when I say unforgivable, I'm not going to sit here and shit on the show every week for the rest of the season and be like, okay, and because of that scene. But in 5 years, when somebody asks me about The Handmaid's Tale, or I'm talking about The Handmaid's Tale, I'm going to say season 5, episode 3, they pulled that whole ass shit where they faked out, or episode 2 technically, where they did a fake death and then the person ended up not being dead. Because you see, I'm still here talking about the Glenn shit from Walking Dead, and that was probably like, fuck, man, I think that was season 6 of The Walking Dead, and I don't even know what season they're on now, but it could literally have been somewhere in between, I don't know, 7 to 10 years since then, and I'm still talking about it now. So, I'm not going to forget this shit. But one last thing before I wrap up, I do want to talk about how much I love what they do with Aunt Lydia, because the saving grace of Janine and Esther still being alive was us getting to see these scenes with Aunt Lydia where, 1 minute she's slapping Esther for doing all of this, and then in the next scene, she's praying that Janine isn't punished for her sins. And I love the fact that the Lydia character is so interesting because she treats these women horribly, but you can tell in scenes like this, she doesn't hate these women. She truly loves them, and she truly believes that what she's doing is in their best interest. And like, to be that delusional, to be that brainwashed is remarkable. And I love watching Ann Dowd like hit all of these different marks where it's like, you hate her, and then you see her here, and you're just like, this doesn't even really feel like the actions of the response of someone who's done the terrible things that this character has done. And you're left to just recognize and realize that the Aunt Lydia character isn't doing, from her perspective, she's not even doing terrible things. She's doing the things that these women need to be done to be great, to do what's best for them, to put them in the best position. Like, she thinks she's doing them a favor. And because of that, she loves these women so much, and she's like, she looks at herself as a failure if something goes wrong with them, with no kind of real recognition as to what she's putting these women through. And I love that aspect of the Aunt Lydia character. And Ann Dowd, she could always crush this shit. Everything she's in, she fucking crushes it. And I loved her in these scenes. So that's all I got for this week. Again, I loved the Aunt Lydia stuff. I really liked everything revolving around Commander Mckenzie. I feel like there was something else I liked too that I'm not recalling right now. But like I said, it missed the mark with me in several ways. The fake out with Janine and Esther, I didn't like that. I thought the window scene at the end was not as great as I think they were planning it out to be. The multiple times of new information being presented as if it was like a big deal, and to me it like really wasn't. But like I said, these are all like, to me, things. You know, you guys might be perfectly fine with this. You might not give a fuck. You might be thinking like, man, he's doing the absolute most shitting on this episode. And yeah, that's fair. You know, I sit in front of you guys and all I do is give my opinion. And a lot of times, most of the time, you guys agree with me. This might be one of those times you don't. But at the end of the day, as long as you watch the video and you come back to see what I think about episode 4, who gives a fuck if you don't agree with me now? So I'll see you guys next week for episode 4. And until then, peace.